My number one business podcast is... Quick, my battery's about to run out. We must be fast. What is happening, guys? Today I've got an absolute treat for you. I'm going to be talking about my top 3 business podcasts. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be pushing out loads of content like this, top 3 business podcasts, my story in investing so far, a review of a few of the books that have definitely given me loads of education and what I've got most of my learning from along the way. These podcasts definitely fit into that category as well. You'll see as we go through, there's a bit of a theme in the type of podcast that I get a lot out of, and we'll deep dive into that. I'm also going to be releasing a newsletter on this podcast, so if you're not already, definitely check out my Substack too. It's all free, so is subscribing to this channel, so I'd really appreciate if you could do that for me. Cool. Okay, let's jump straight in. So my top 3 podcasts. All of my favorite podcasts definitely hit a good balance between really entertaining, really dynamic characters in the podcast, but also educational, business related. These 3 top podcasts are probably my top podcasts of any category. They're definitely the 3 that I spend most of my time listening to. These are going to cover topics: business, economics, the stock market. They're not what you would consider probably the most stereotypical entertainment, but the people who host them definitely do a really good job of bringing the topics to life, making them really fun and really exciting to listen to. So without further ado, let's get into it. So number 3 on the list is Snacks Daily. So Snacks Daily is run by Jack and Nick, and they are so entertaining to listen to. They bounce off each other, they rap the intro. They are based mostly on stock market. The podcast has been run by Robinhood, which is kind of a well-known investing app, stocks and shares app in America. So these 2 run the podcast under Robinhood's name. So they have to do like loads of legal disclaimers like this is not financial advice, blah, 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 blah. So instead of making it really boring and just chucking it in at the end, they do it as their intro and they wrap it as they go through it. And they just, it's really good level of educational but also really entertaining to listen to. The structure of their podcast, it's usually 15 to 20 minutes, so perfect for my commute in. My drive to work is 15 minutes, so absolutely spot on nearly every time. They cover 3 topics each episode, 3 things that are relevant that are happening in businesses that are useful if you're investing in stocks and shares, but also if you just want to build on your business knowledge in a kind of a fun way and you don't have that much time to do it. Snacks Daily is definitely great. They jump in snack style to loads of different kind of anomalies in the market. So their latest podcast, they jumped in snack style on Torrid, which is a plus size company. From their research, 67% of women in the US are over a size 10 in clothing, but only 14% of the clothes sold are over size 10. So this company has seen the opportunity in the market. They've jumped in, they're making the most of that mismatch in supply and demand. The next company they talked about in the last episode was Didi, which is essentially the Uber of China. The Chinese authorities have put a stop on their app purchases on all platforms for them at the moment because they're doing a cybersecurity investigation into them. It's the latest kind of in a series of the Bitcoin being banned in China and cryptocurrency being banned in China, and now they're kind of making it more difficult for different companies to get up and running there as well. So they jump into a few different snack facts on that one. And then the last one of their latest episode was Buzzer, which is essentially TikTokifying sports. Gen Zs these days don't have the concentration or don't want to dedicate their time to watching a full football match or soccer match or baseball match. So they can get this Buzzer app, which will send them a notification when either the players they decide to follow are having a bit of action in the game, or there's general highlights in the games that they want to follow. So they'll be able to watch a snippet and then move on. But yeah, the keynote essentially from Snacks Daily is really fast paced, really entertaining. Snacks are easily digestible, and yeah, definitely do get around to it daily. It comes out daily, which is fantastic. Swiftly moving on to number 2. This is the oldest one that I've been listening to, so the one I started listening to first. If I had to choose one podcast to listen to for the rest of my life, Planet Money would definitely be a contender. I discovered it last summer, so I've been listening to it for a year now, and the best way to describe it is TV for your ears. It's generally entertaining whether you are interested in economics or not. It just shows you what's behind the curtain, loads of different industries, which is why I've just absolutely loved listening to it. Myself and Yai, we got married in August last year. We planned on going to Hawaii for our honeymoon, but Rona. So we ended up getting an adventure van, and we did a road trip from his home place all the way up through West Wales, through the Lake District, up into Scotland, across to Northern Ireland, to my home, and then back again. And pretty much the soundtrack for most of that was Planet Money, and that was a lot of driving hours. Yeah, I can't rate it highly enough. Economics is always something that has interested me, but I always thought it would be too boring to actually dedicate time to learn properly. And I first came onto Planet Money when I can't remember how I came across it, but I came across their summer school, which was 6 or 8 episodes where you learn about economic principles essentially. But they don't just teach you about economic principles, they put it into like real life scenarios. So one example that completely resonates with me, and I purposely didn't re-look this episode up, I didn't re-listen to it before I made this video, because I just wanted to show you an example of how much information I retained from listening to an episode once over a year ago. So they were trying to explain theory of opportunity cost. And they were talking about this woman who was dating, and she got to a point in her life where she didn't want to date casually anymore. She wanted to settle down, find the one, get married, start having a family, all that sort of stuff. She had studied economics, so it was quite analytical in its approach. She downloaded all the dating apps, went on lots of first dates, and because she was going on so many, she wanted an efficient way of recording her first impressions of these people. So essentially, she had a spreadsheet with all of her dates' names on them, and beside their name in that first date column, she put in 3 things to describe them. So big ego, likes cats, nice eyes. Every time she would hit that third date milestone, she would bring them to an environment with her friends so she could see how they interact with her friends, if that person fits into her friend group, etc. So there would be one person, she went on loads of dates, there'd be one person who made their way through kind of all of her little tests and hurdles that she was using to find the one. And they kind of passed all those, but there was just something missing. So she kind of 6 months in made the decision to call it off for no apparent reason, like there wasn't one big significant thing, there was just something missing. So she did that, and then the next week she met her now husband. And they used this story to explain the concept of opportunity cost. This way of explaining opportunity cost really resonated with me. Now, that would be in a school scenario, they would have just been like, this is the definition for opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best thing you give up whenever you make a decision. Memorize that definition and write it down word for word in your exam, or you're going to lose points for every word that you get wrong. Like, that would never have resonated with me personally. I might have managed to memorize it for that exam, like all of the definitions that were in my brain at 1.5 years ago, but now they're all gone. And even from university, trying to memorize all that stuff, it's all gone too. But Planet Money is ingrained because of the stories that they integrate into their teachings and make it really fun to kind of carry along. You don't even realize that you're learning economic principles. You just think that you're listening to a story about this woman and her dating escapades. But anyway, that was one of them. They've done loads and loads of episodes on anything that you can think of. One of the recent ones that I listened to was like the Great Bee Migration or something, I think it was called, where they followed this beekeeper who was gathering up all of his hives, putting them on the back of a lorry, covering them in nets, and traveling them down to California for 4 days to pollinate the almond trees, and then was going to move them to pollinate apples somewhere in a different state. And I never knew that they transported bees around the country to make sure all these crops were pollinated. They go and they find a person who's doing it, and they're only one person in a massive pool of people, but they make it real by going and meeting the beekeeper, following their story from the start, watching them put the bees onto the back of this lorry, bringing them down through all these different states, and there'll be some reason along the way that relates to things that we see happen in the economy and in real life. So the bee population is dwindling, and that's why almonds are more expensive now, because bees have to travel further to pollinate the almond trees or something like that, and there'll be some takeaway. But if you just read that fact, you would have been like, oh, you don't retain it. But because it's wrapped up in this story, the knowledge just sinks in a really fun way. So bringing on to number one, drum roll. My number one business podcast is My First Million. I discovered this podcast at Christmas time. It's presented by Sean Puri and Sam Parr, and it is, I don't know, these guys are the closest things that I would consider business mentors, I guess. I mean, I've listened to them for over 200 hours and they don't even know who I am, but I feel like I know them. They are really transparent in the way they deliver their podcast, to do with their investments, their businesses, their mindset, their lives. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Their podcast is a bit of a mix of just the two of them riffing on business ideas. It's essentially a business idea podcast where they come up with loads of different ways, like, oh, it'd be really cool if you tried this as a business, or this is a problem that I have. I really want someone to come up with a business to do with this. And then they kind of challenge people. They're like, if you have a business that you think can fix this problem, email me, share it to me on Twitter, and I'll invest in your company. It's really cool. Sometimes they have guests on as well. So they've had all sorts of guests from all sorts of businesses. Some of those are to do with like cryptos, NFTs. The guy started up 1-800-GOT-JUNK. A guy who's running a vending machine business, real estate, like a whole variety of businesses. Like I can't even name all of the different genres and types because there's just so many. But what they do when they have these guests on is you feel like you're getting access to like a backstage pass, pretty much. Like you're getting to listen in on a closed doors conversation, because they manage to cut through all of the bull that most people want to do when they get on a podcast, to self-promote, be like, oh, this is me, I'm so great, my business is great, everything was blah, 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 blah. But what they managed to do is get past all of that and get to the real nitty-gritty, the real meat, the juicy bits from these people who've built these amazing companies. I mean, where else would you get access to that without those two kind of probing people? They're not really that scared to upset people. They like a good story. They'll get quite controversial people on the podcast as well, who some people might not, because I mean, in today's world, everyone's got to toe a certain line, don't they? But they kind of see past that a little bit, and if there's a good story to be had or a good point of view to be had, they'll get pretty much anyone on the podcast to see what that is. Not necessarily saying they agree with that person, but just to get their side of the story, get awesome insights into their lives. Like they've built a number of businesses to get to the point that they are. They both have quite a lot of cash behind them now. And the way that kind of I, from a starting out perspective, look at them, you can see them looking at people who are 2 or 3 steps ahead of them on the ladder, and they're like, wow, that person is so amazing. Like, how do they do those things? And it's good to kind of just have an insight into how their brain works, having made enough money that they don't need to work again, and the things that they decide to spend their time on. As I said, businesses that they invest in, the frameworks that they use, and then their mindset around money, lifestyle, ambition, but the things that drive them, etc. If you have any podcasts that you think that I would enjoy, I would absolutely love if you could comment those below. Those are the top 3 that I listen to, if not daily, then on a weekly basis, at least twice a week. Absolutely fantastic. App that I heard about from Ali Abdaal. If you don't follow him on YouTube, you definitely should. He's got some absolute golden nuggets to deliver to you if you are on a business journey, or just is a productivity YouTube channel. But one of the apps that he has at the moment for his note taking is Air Quotes. What that app does is, if you're listening to a podcast or an audiobook, you can press the button and it will write a quote or save a section of your audiobook or your podcast into your notes. Hopefully, if it's a popular podcast that you're listening to, it'll transcribe that for you as well. So there's so many things that I've heard on podcasts. I listen to podcasts mostly when I drive, so I can't just stop holding the wheel and start writing things down as I'm going along the motorway. I wish there was some way of at least bookmarking them, but the Air Quotes app, if you are on Apple devices, is something that you must get if you listen to a lot of podcasts or a lot of audiobooks. Anyway, Thank you for listening today to my top 3 business podcasts. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you do end up listening to any of these podcasts, please comment below. And if you've got any recommendations for me on podcasts I listen to, again, comment below and I'll definitely give them a try. I'm a very new YouTube channel, so any little bit of followership that I get goes a long way, and I appreciate all 3 of you at the moment that are subscribed. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.